Hey, welcome to Lab, the podcast. Grateful to be here with the wonderful Erica Fetterman. This is super, super fun to be in person. Erica is a former fashion executive and now wardrobe stylist. She's a wife and a mom of two and started Madison and Third Styling with a mission to help women rewrite their style stories. Born and raised across the Hudson River in New Jersey, Erica always knew she wanted to work in the fashion industry. And with a business and marketing degree from Rutgers University, she made her way into NYC and worked her way through the wholesale divisions of La Perla Fashions and Simone Perel before moving to Tampa in 2015. After staying home with her daughters of 5 years, she decided to take her years of personal and professional experience and guide women on how to curate wardrobes that reflect the women they are today. So since 2022, in the launch, Erica styled over 125 clients and enjoyed sharing her knowledge, speaking with women focused in business groups. Erica, thank you for sharing some time exploring beauty and fashion and faith. I love this.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me today.
Yeah, it's fun.
Yes.
I'm glad we get to do it in person.
Yes.
And that's because you're here in Tampa, and that's how we met in this city. But originally, you're from New Jersey, as you said in your bio. So I'm going to put you on the spot. Tampa or New Jersey, which one feels more like home? It's brutal.
Oh gosh, I think New Jersey still feels like home, but Tampa has been really, really good to me and my family. So, but when I do go back to New Jersey, a little bit of the accent comes back. And my family is still there. So I have two sisters and my mom and dad are still in New Jersey. So I have to say it still feels like home.
Yeah. Yeah, it always, I mean, home is like that. I think where our roots first were sunk in the ground, that's always a bit of home. But Tampa, I love how you said that it's been good to you. That's how Cammie and I feel, and I think so many people about Tampa. It's small enough that people embrace you quickly. And we have felt like we've met some of the most extraordinary people, including you and Matt here in this city.
Well, we feel the same about you and Cammie. So we love your family. So
it's fun that we get to do life together. And that's part of, I mentioned this, but I've wanted to have this conversation for a long time because of our work with V3 and just the reality that beauty points beyond itself. And we always say it's a transcendental thing, it's a penultimate thing, and that ultimately God is the source of all life and beauty. And so we talk a lot about visual art. We just did a poetry book release. We do the symphony project that we're working on. But I was thinking about fashion because we're all creative people. We're all in some way artists, and we don't think about that. But there's this venue every single day where we're making artistic, creative decisions, and that's in play. Are we thinking well about it? So I've been wanting to talk to you about that. Before we dive into it, though, take us to New Jersey, because I want to get a sense of your neighborhood, where you grew up. What was it like growing up? Were you literally looking across the Hudson?
literally. So I grew up in a small town, Kearney, New Jersey, and it ran along the Hudson River. And it was quite high. So my bedroom window was of the New York City skyline growing up. So yeah, that was really fun. A lot of exposure to New York City. We used to go in with me and some of my best friends in high school would go into the city at a really young age, or I consider young now, but about 15 and 16, we would ride the train in and we just loved it. We loved the fashion. We loved seeing the people walk the streets and the women and the style they had. We were just... Yeah, we really admired a lot of the women and their style, and yeah.
Yeah. I love that we talked to Sunny Spencer as a friend.
Yeah.
And so she owns a great little boutique shop here in Tampa. Also, she was from the Northeast, worked in New York. But she grew up here. Her dad, I think, was a tomato farmer, if I remember that. But right here outside of Tampa. But she grew up as a kid just thinking about fashion. And it was interesting. I talked to her because sometimes looking back is the only way that we can see the evidence of God's providence in our life. And she was like, looking back even to when I was on a farm, I always had this desire to work in fashion. For you, what's your earliest memory?
Oh gosh, earliest memory, I probably was like 5 years old. My mom she used to take photos of me, and I was always very posing and stylish, and I just loved putting things together. I remember looking at back in the day, we would receive those catalogs, and I would cut out outfits and put them together on my own.
Mm.
Um, yeah, so at the earliest, it's probably 5 or 6 years old. I knew that I wanted to. I just enjoyed just putting things together, the creative part of that. And I have two sisters, and it just growing up, I would guide them on what to wear. And we just loved, going back to school shopping was just such a thrill. I mean, it was such a thrill. And my parents, they worked really hard. And so we knew that back to school shopping meant that we weren't going to have many shopping trips throughout the year. So we really, just thought a lot about what we were going to select and
Mm.
how we were going to make, the most of our outfits.
Yeah.
So yeah, it goes back to a very, very young age.
Yeah. It's when you talk about that, I remember that back to school, we're literally in back to school season
Mm-hmm.
right now.
Yeah.
And as a kid, we grew up we were well cared for,
Mm-hmm.
but we were by no means like the upper class
Mm-hmm.
kids in school. We were like middle class right there. And dad worked really hard. Mom stayed at home. And so back to school was a big deal because you
Mm-hmm.
may get one coat, and that one coat was your coat. And
Right.
we at times, you're making choices. Back in the day, everybody wanted Jordans and all of that, and we couldn't afford that.
Mm-hmm.
And so you would be thoughtful, like, okay, what can I get that reflects a bit of who I am or my desire or style, but isn't beyond our means
Right.
or trying to be? That was a complex
Right.
thing, and we'll get into it later. But who shaped you maybe to imagine that that could be a vocation? I mean, it's one thing as an
Mm-hmm.
artistic kid, a creative minded person, you're cutting and pasting and imagining the world.
Mm-hmm.
At what point and who was it that shifted you to believe like, no, that's an industry where you can work in and have an impact?
Oh gosh, I would have to say probably media. I think, just my friendships in high school. So in the small town, there was just a mix of backgrounds, and two of my best friends were actually European. So one was background; her parents were from Portugal, and the other was from Spain, and they had great style as well and appreciated fashion and clothing and putting things together. So I definitely was influenced by that friend group. And also, I think I just started to become more. I was watching certain shows like What Not to Wear and The Look for Less. And I think, thinking back to what you just said, growing up, I learned the resourcefulness with shopping and how to make the most of what you have. So I gravitated towards those kinds of shows. So in high school, I played around with the thought of, okay, I was aware of the schools like FIT and Parsons Design School, but I could not draw for my life.
Yeah.
I'm terrible. Oh gosh, I can't. My poor girls. They asked me to draw an animal, and I'm like, no, just don't. ask,
Style your
ask
animal.
dad.
Yeah.
So I just thought design is out of the question. I think, but I still wanted to be a part of that fashion world, and I knew I probably could be a part of it in more of a business aspect. Um, so I would just have to say, I think at that time, one going into New York City my friend group, and also, the things that I were watching, what was watching on TV. I thought, okay, maybe I can make this happen
Yeah.
somehow. But I knew that it would probably be more of a business way in
Sure.
versus design.
Design.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. What's interesting is that creative part of you as a kid was there and a
Mhm.
part of your story. And then the business acumen, and you obviously did well and sharpened that part of who you are. I'm curious if faith was a part of your life as a kid, or did that come later? Because you said like styled well.
Mhm.
And what's interesting about this is Lewis talks about beauty as being objective and subjective.
Mhm.
both.
Mm-hmm.
And so I love that. That's a deeply Christian perspective on beauty that
Mm-hmm.
translates to fashion, that there is a way to define what is beauty and what is not beauty.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a controversial statement, but it comes
Mm-hmm.
from a Christian perspective that says there is beauty has an objective quality to it. In An Abolition of Man, Lewis talks about that. Like, can we look at a waterfall and objectively say that's beautiful? And if so, what is it about that thing?
Mm-hmm.
And that goes to Aquinas when a thing has clarity, it has harmony, it has radiance or integrity as well. Those aspects, that was Christian thought saying beauty is objective,
Mm-hmm.
and we do have bodies, and we
Mm-hmm.
do then have clothing that reflects a Christian worldview. So I'm curious about that part of your life in that story of design and business. Was faith a part of that early on, or did that come later, that started to help shape and form the way you think about beauty and fashion?
So I would have to say that came later. I, uh, I, we did go to church growing up. I would have to say that my relationship with Jesus really strengthened as an adult, and actually, really, when me and my then fiance moved to Tampa. But then I think that I was more. I wouldn't say that um, my relation. I I can't quite say that like faith played a major part then in high school.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I love that it's even as we talked earlier, those
Hmm.
early influences of going to church as a kid, or maybe
Yeah.
Christmas or
Yeah.
Easter, these foundational things, there's some distant idea that
Yes.
God is out there.
Yes.
And then over the
Right.
course of a life, we realize like, no, God is not just out there, but he's here. And the
Yeah. Everywhere.
Christian conviction of God with us.
Right.
And then it moves even closer because it's like, okay, and now God wants to move in and like make
Hmm.
his home in us,
Right.
which is a particular, this goes back to fashion. You go, okay, well, if my body is a temple,
Hmm.
then the Christian theology says that we have a body
Hmm.
and that it is meaningful.
Hmm.
That's a different look. So we have a body, it's meaningful, and it's also not bad. Like God moves in. He wants to there's something about the human person that becomes the dwelling place of God.
Hmm.
And so I'm curating a temple. What do I do with that? Like, again, all these things
Yes.
are part of why this conversation is so good. But one more, just to kind of
Hmm.
think about fashion. You made the decision in 2022 to say, I'm going to open a business and not
Hmm.
just do the executive side of fashion, but go more toward design, more towards helping people think about the choices they're making. Why was 2022 the right time for you to launch?
Well, I had explored a few months earlier that year of I knew that so I stayed home for 5 years with both my girls, Kennedy and Ellison. And Ellison was going to be going to school full time. And I just prayed, I asked God, like, what should I do with my time, my extra time now? Um, I know that he put this idea in my head months ago. And so I had done some research and because, starting a wardrobe styling business. I didn't feel it was the right time then. So I did just a little bit of homework. I felt like he was telling me to prepare. And so I kept praying about when was the right time. And I've shared this story several times of how this came about, but it was actually a Sunday, and I went to church with the girls. Matt was traveling, and I just put my hand up during worship music, and I just asked God, "What do you have for me? Like in this, is this really, something you've put it on my heart? Is this something you want me to do?" I don't know why I'm getting emotional.
Yeah, no.
um, and so when I walked out, one of my dear friends, she came up to me and she just said, I really want you to just help me with my closet. I love like how you put things together. She didn't even know that this was on my heart. And so I came home and I said, I'm just going to do it.
Mm,
I'm going to start a business.
yeah.
Literally started an
Yeah.
Instagram
Yeah.
page.
Here we go. There we
I
go.
just, And Matt came home the next day and I said, I started a business.
It's like, wait,
It's like, what?
yeah,
And I'm like, yes, I did. And I mean, God he's taken care of it every step of the way. It got word and it kind of word of mouth and it just snowballed from there. And
yeah,
it's been amazing.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's so cool to hear you talk about the way that you prayed about it
Mm,
and that there was an idea, like
yeah.
the spark of
Yeah.
imagination in your mind, like in
Yeah.
your heart, thinking and planning a little bit like, how would I do that? I wonder how I would do that, but letting it germinate or marinate. And I just yesterday was talking to one of my daughters about vocation
Mm-hmm.
and the reality that it comes from this word of vocare. There's a calling for your life.
Yeah. I
And
love
how do
that.
you know that
Yeah.
there's a calling? Well, there's a
Yeah.
caller.
Yeah.
And somehow God is calling you and putting these thoughts and imaginations, and they need to mature. And
Yeah.
you're in dialogue. I love that in worship.
Of
Literally an honest
yeah.
question that
Yeah.
just is like, what
Yeah.
what do you want me to do with this?
Yeah. Exactly.
And that intersection of that and you're paying attention.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes we're like, well, how do I know if God
Mm,
is in this or not? And I always tell people, like, pay attention to the strange things. Like, I'm praying this, and then this person intersects me and says,
mm-hmm.
hey, would you help me in this way? And it's the
Mm-hmm.
precise thing that I've been asking, like
Yes.
there's no coincidences. So you're in this moment, you start the business, you launch the business, you start helping. What would you say is for you the most meaningful part
Oh
of your
gosh.
work?
I would have to say, well, I just um I've always felt that well, in this growing up being one of three girls, I'm the middle child. I have two sisters, and working in the fashion industry in New York City, it was predominantly women, and I've always enjoyed working with women and helping women, whether it was in fitness and being an instructor, leading Bible studies. I've just always enjoyed it. And during that time, I just felt it's so interesting how God just like put everything together, the fashion and just that will in my heart to want to help
Sure.
women. So I um, I was noticing while God was preparing me and before I launched, I was just noticing my friend groups around me and women who just recently in a similar stage of life, maybe just had a baby, stayed home for several years, or going back into work, and the conversation they were having with themselves and how they were feeling about themselves. And something that felt so natural and easy to me in a
Mm,
way. It's just inside, I want to help.
yeah.
I want to help in this way. And I feel like God just put all that together, all those years and of experience. And so the most meaningful part is, I would have to say, is the not, I think when there's several process to um, uh, the styling sessions that I offer, but when we are in the first session of like a in-person styling, and they're wearing something that they've never thought they could wear if they told themselves they couldn't
Mm,
or believe that they couldn't look this certain way, and the look on their face when
mm,
they feel that they feel seen,
mm.
because
Yeah.
ultimately that's
Yeah.
we want to feel seen and we want to feel heard, right?
Yeah.
And most of as Christians, we know that that first comes from
Yeah.
God, but we also want to. I'm so emotional.
No, it's all
We
right.
want to be seen by our spouse and our family and our friends and our community in
Yeah.
a way that makes us feel good
Yeah.
and not from a vanity standpoint, right?
Yeah.
So that's my favorite part.
Yeah.
Yeah, that look of joy on their face. Yeah.
That part of joy too is particular. I feel like I can't get 10 minutes past anything without quoting Frederick Buechner, but he talks about calling being that
Mhm.
intersection of our great joy and the world's great need.
Mhm.
And that if you found that, where you have this delight that comes easy to you, like it's just simple for me to put these things together. I'm like,
Mhm.
I'm 5 or 6 doing that. I've been doing it my whole life. It's my great joy. And then I intersect somebody who feels caught.
Mhm.
And you're describing something really particularly important there, because again, back to our bodies, back to scripture, like I'm fearfully and wonderfully made.
Mhm.
And the Christian conviction that starts to bring us into the depth of this conversation is, again, that God has made me in a particular way, uniquely. Psalm says 139, I'm fearfully and wonderfully made. And Martin Buber, this other wonderful philosopher, says we all secretly and bashfully wait for someone else to confirm the thou in us, right?
Mhm.
Like
Mhm.
that sense that you see me as a thou,
Mhm.
not objectified through my fashion as an it. Like
Mhm.
my fashion is not making me an object
Right.
to you,
Right.
and but my fashion is also not othering me in the
Mhm.
sense I'm distinct and unique and
Right.
particular,
Right.
but it somehow, my fashion, if it's done well, I think is artistic in the sense that a creative agent, a creative being is
Mhm.
able to use material to tell the story
Mhm.
that they know and God knows that,
Mhm.
and hopefully there's greater knowing of who God's made them to be, and they're able to share that in a way that they're seen and heard. That's remarkable. Like when we talk about thinking well about fashion, I don't think like I'm wearing a black t-shirt as I often do. And I don't know that I think about, is that radiating some part of this, or is it consistent, coherent with who God made me to be? That's why partially, these conversations are so good, but that feeling of not being seen,
Mhm.
but also not being objectified.
Mhm.
That's a challenge today. And I can't speak from the pressure that you face or your clients face, but I'm a dad of daughters
Mhm.
and I have a wife.
Mhm.
And I wonder, what do you think what are the unique pressures facing women in that space of I want to be seen but not objectified?
Mhm.
What's the feeling there that you encounter over and over and over again for women? What's the pressure that they're
The
facing?
pressure. Well, I feel one of the most common when I'm doing a consult call with a new client, one of the most common phrases that I hear is that I feel like I've lost myself,
Mm,
and that I hear over and over and over from women, especially who've bore children, who've spent years working, maybe on a career or spent years taking care of elderly parents. And so, yeah, I think for a lot of us, we can relate in some way of that feeling of feeling like you've lost yourself. Um, and I don't, I think, I think it's very interesting. I think that things are shifting a little from maybe 20 years ago in terms of acceptance of certain um, things or more acceptance of different sizes and looks, which is a positive. But the struggles I think a lot of women are facing is one, time.
yeah.
Time. I mean, that's why they're reaching out and they're calling me. I mean, life is just, it's so busy. It can be so distracting. And so how do I have the time to really um, pull myself and look, look put together? And I just feel like the struggle is that they're just really, really stuck.
Yeah.
They're really, really stuck. And there's just so much more information and more ads and more all these things telling them what to buy and so it's just a lot of distraction.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can see that. I think that's the behind the question there. I was thinking about the pressure that we face in this space, particularly maybe, and I don't know, from my chair, all I get to see is like how to help guide my daughters and what my wife experiences, but the
Yes.
pressures
Yes.
of
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
there's other voices saying, this is how you should look. This
Mm-hmm.
is who you are. To be accepted, you must take on this shape.
Mm-hmm.
And we saw that rapidly, like with the rise of social media. A
Mm-hmm.
kid in Kansas can be influenced heavily by fashion in Los Angeles
Mm-hmm.
that and a particular type of body or
Mm-hmm.
color or something that we say, well, the culture quickly, an algorithm says
Mm-hmm.
this is beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to pull us back to this idea that Aquinas has of beauty as, first of all, integrity.
Mm-hmm.
The thing is what the thing is. And
Mm-hmm.
in this case, a human person is that fearfully and wonderfully made person.
Mm-hmm.
God made me.
Mm-hmm.
And I have a size, I have a
Mm-hmm.
dimension, I
Mm-hmm.
have a height, I
Mm-hmm.
have an eye color. Like they're God-given things.
Yeah.
And it is what it is. Also, it's not perfect
Right.
in the sense
Mm-hmm.
of what is perfect. And even in a broken world, like I may have been through a tragedy or an accident or something that has impacted and my physical body bears a scar
Mm-hmm.
or bears the reality of having kids. Like those are
Mm-hmm.
realities. And in Aquinas's view, the integrity of the thing is part of beauty. So a mom who has had a baby and her figure reflects having a baby,
Mm-hmm.
Aquinas would say that the integrity of that is part of the beauty because something is what it is,
Mm-hmm.
right? In addition, it has harmony. The parts are a part of a harmonious whole, right? So
Mm-hmm.
one note fits the chord. And I want
Mm-hmm.
to ask you about that because that goes to color and texture and how do parts fit whole. But you have that integrity of a thing and the harmony of a thing, and then the clarity. It shows out a radiance or a brilliance, and that's that beauty. It points to something beyond it even. It
Mm-hmm.
makes something visible. So for everybody listening, I want to anchor like, we can talk about fashion and beauty,
Mm-hmm.
and we should.
Yeah.
God gave us a body
Absolutely.
and we're
Yeah.
artists, we're
Right.
creative people. So it's not fair and it's maybe not thinking well to say, well, I'll be thoughtful about my home
Mm-hmm.
and the space that I'll curate for a stranger that may come
Mm-hmm.
in, or I can appreciate beauty when it comes to a flower arrangement.
Mm-hmm.
But then when I think about fashion, there's that kind of guilt or shame that says I shouldn't think about that the higher Christian value is to not think about that. And I think the fear there is vanity. Like, I
Mm-hmm.
don't want to be vain. I don't want to be pretentious. I don't want it to be about me.
Mm-hmm.
How do you balance that, right? Like, thinking well about it, attending to it as a part of who God's made us to be, and this beautiful gift to be creative and steward beauty, but not cross into that space of vanity. How do you help your clients like think well about that?
Well, I think it like we mentioned before, I think it really is about balance and what is the purpose, right? Most of my clients and they 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 want to feel good about themselves, right? Because they know ultimately that, and I know that that's going to spill over into their relationships, into their marriage, into their parenting, into their friendships. And so that it comes, we have to ask ourselves that question of like, why am I doing this?
Yeah.
I'm doing this to feel good. And when that client, when we do style and she is radiating and she is feeling good, in a way that is not about the label or the price tag or a comparison.
Mm.
It's in a way that it's just she's feeling seen, and now she does want to go on that date with her
Yeah.
husband.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
there's just a posture that is different.
Yeah.
And so I think most of my clients, because when they do reach out, they're ready, and they're ready for an intentional wardrobe. And so they know that they're going to they're they're not really looking to add just to add. I mean, I think that's something that maybe comes with maturity and experience. Um, and so they want to, they, I think that that's not a conversation, thankfully, that I have to have very often with clients.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. They're
Yeah.
already thinking well.
They're already thinking well.
Yeah.
Yes, which is great. And sometimes, there is a little of a excitement, impulsivity that may come with the excitement of having a styling session. But then we take it. I take it back to, okay, let's think about this. And do we really need to add this into the wardrobe? Is this like repetitive? Does this make sense? And yeah, and they're really, they're very receptive to that.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I think it's ultimately asking the question of, why when they reach out, they're telling me why they're doing this. And I know it's coming from a place of really wanting to just reset and feel good about themselves and put themselves first. After many, many, many years of maybe not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's good. And I think that idea that God gave me a body, I
Mm-hmm.
am who I am.
Mm-hmm.
And first, to not be ashamed of that,
Right.
to not undervalue it
No.
or become overly preoccupied with it, which is what vanity would be,
Right.
is that over preoccupation with what someone else thinks of me.
Right.
That's vanity. Is
Yeah.
I'm finding that what I care most about is Riley's approval. And
Mm-hmm.
it's good to think about, like, I'm in relationship, that's important. But if I become overly saturated with his
Mm-hmm.
perspective of me and I'm trying to please that, then I've turned to something that's become disordered. This right way of thinking might say more, or a Christian vision
Mm-hmm.
might say, God gave me a body
Mm-hmm.
and God is an artist and he gave me something to steward. And now the way that I choose to dress that body
Mm-hmm.
actually highlights or in some way makes visible what God has done and doesn't cover it up, isn't ashamed of it, doesn't try to make it not what it is, right?
Right.
That would be breaking with that integrity. So integrity first, but then harmony. I'm curious your thoughts on this because I think, like, I always think Riley has great eyes. And you go, well, what makes his, like, that's God given, right?
Right. Right.
And so I can make a choice to hide that or to
Right.
do something
Right.
that isn't in harmony with what God made. And that's part of the design or the artist's touch, is to say, oh, well, if God gave this, then that's something beautiful that God has done.
Right.
And so you can cooperate or participate with that in a certain way. So how do you help somebody who is, again, thinking about that harmony perspective?
Right.
If I come to you and I say, I have brown eyes,
Mm-hmm.
what do you think from a styling standpoint? To
Mm-hmm.
everybody's like, he's shamefully trying to get free advice. So we'll say
Wear
blue
green.
eyes.
Wear green.
We'll go blue
No.
eyes for Riley. How do you think about that as an artist? Like a 5-year-old version of you that's like,
Right.
oh, well, if God gave you brown eyes, then do this.
Yes. Well,
Yeah.
we all have positive attributes, and that also comes to the body, right? And so whether I'm taking it from a position of body type, and so there's commonly 5 very uh, standard body types, and if we talk about that, and really what I'm getting at is let's select clothing that flatter and that accentuate your positive attributes versus selecting items or clothes that draw you to feel invisible or hide,
Mm-hmm.
right? And disguise. Because when we're feeling uncomfortable with ourselves or a certain area, what do we tend to do? We tend to just want to hide.
Hide it. Yeah.
But we're focusing on areas that God wants us to. Let's look at what God has given you, what the positive, the beauty,
Yeah.
right? This
Yeah.
beautiful neckline, this beautiful waistline, this beautiful shape, and do it in a way that is elegant and that honors you and your body, and in a way that just shows pride,
Yeah.
not vanity,
Yeah.
pride,
Yeah.
right? Um,
I
yeah,
love that idea with when you say hiding. that vanity can, an over preoccupation with somebody else's opinion of yourself,
Mm-hmm.
that's vanity. And that
Mm-hmm.
can go in both ways. I want you to look at me or certain parts of me in order to get your approval because I'm desperate for your opinion of me.
Mm-hmm.
But I can also, vanity can be the other way, which is to
Mm-hmm.
say, I want to hide from, because I'm overly preoccupied with what you might think of my whatever, right?
Right.
Or of me. I
Right.
think that's good. And I like what you said about elegance in the sense that, and you mentioned relationship, but the other thing we always talk about, enchanted reality, the story is visible and invisible. And so there is an invisible reality. We're in relationship with the God who made us.
Mm-hmm.
And so we literally are in participation with the artist who made us, our bodies.
Mm-hmm.
God is very much alive, very much aware of who he made us to be, very much loves us and gave us the freedom to be who he made us to be. And if we twist that for our own gain or to meet the world's approval or to try
Mm-hmm.
to like send a message that we are honoring a cultural idol or value,
Mm-hmm.
then that's a disharmony in the relational side. But and we can also do that by undervaluing. I was going to write a book a long time ago about called Gray Moo-Moos, or it had this idea, but it just seems like brutalist architecture, everything concrete, everything block, nothing with form or dimension. Like that's
Mm-hmm.
not the world God made. You look at
Mm-mm.
the natural world that God made and it's pregnant with life and beauty. It's dancing, tingling, a festival.
Yeah.
That's actually true. So if the
Mm-hmm.
heavens declare the glory of God, day after day they pour forth their speech. I'm fearfully and wonderfully made. I have a body. How can I honor that
Mm-hmm.
and do it in relationship? The other side of this is even this conversation is a bit of a luxury. And people would say it's a first world conversation because here we are even talking about it. We're not just surviving. So how do you think about like stewardship and the reality that we're called to think about our neighbor? You think of Francis Assisi, like was called to give up everything and to live a very, very like a life of poverty out of his
Mm-hmm.
sense of calling to say that to love my neighbor is to actually give to the point of giving all my clothes away, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or Emerson,
Yeah.
sell your clothes,
Yeah.
keep your thoughts. This idea that
Yeah.
how do you help people think about from a stewardship standpoint that balance of saying, okay, if God gave me a body, fashion is a part of beauty and it's good, it's a good, but it can become too much or too little
Mm-hmm.
if I overemphasize or underemphasize. How do you help people to think about it from a stewardship standpoint?
I think there's two things. I think, like I mentioned before, I'm thankful the clientele that I have because I feel like there is an awareness already of that excess of maybe in the past, and so I love that. Like when we do a wardrobe edit, usually where a lot of clients begin is um, we review their current wardrobe and there are things that we are, donating or getting rid of. And they're always thoughtful and mindful of who can I give this to? Who can I pass this on to? Who can benefit from this? So they're always thinking that way. So it's not a wasteful. And with my whole aim and goal is really creating an intentional wardrobe and more of doing capsules.
Mm,
So there is less, right? It's the whole goal and aim is how can I create curate a wardrobe that will not be of excess
sure.
and create and make the most of these 20 25 items.
Mm,
Um, and to also have like the intention is for quality and for um, timeless pieces that are going to live in your wardrobe for years to come.
mm,
And even if and then you can pass it on.
yeah.
So that's the intention of what I do. It's less about this is in for this season and more and it's more about like let's really be mindful and thoughtful about what we're selecting
Mm,
so that like it really is it just really is in line with your lifestyle.
yeah.
Yeah.
That's so great to frame it in that way of saying that there's fads and trends, right?
Yeah.
Where
Yeah.
things become disposable.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's an excess in our culture
Mm-hmm.
where we can be thinking, well, I can buy 20 of these very cheap items that are made in conditions that are not ethical. They're not
Right.
consistent with a Christian vision of reality or
Mm-hmm.
of human persons. And we can kind of mindlessly think, well, that's good stewardship because it's only economic.
Mm-hmm.
But there's this other way that you're proposing that says, no, let's guard against excess, but let's also think about artistry and quality
Mm-hmm.
and good stewardship,
Right.
that I could invest in something that is made well
Right.
by people who are cared for well
Mm-hmm.
into a garment that is going to it can be consistent with the story that God has given me to steward, the body
Mm-hmm.
he's given me to steward. It's going to bring him glory. So it's going to be glorifying to God, good for my neighbor,
Mm-hmm.
and it's going to help my who I am created to be radiant, right? All those things can be true, and I may make a choice today that says I'm going to keep that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's radically different from our disposable
Mm-hmm.
culture than to
Or how
say,
can I repurpose it?
come
How
on.
can I make it more relevant for what it is today?
I
Yeah.
love that.
Yeah.
And how can I share it? I love that
Yes.
about good art, that
Yes.
it can travel. And so
Oh,
just
yeah.
like that,
Mm-hmm.
you can share that with someone else
Mm-hmm.
and help them see something new and I love that that's becoming more
Mm-hmm.
acceptable is
It's
a
like,
wrong
right.
word, but
Yeah.
it's more common.
Thrifting is cool.
Yeah, there you go. That's a better way to say it. Can we talk before we run out of time? I want to go into this, which is just hard. I don't know that there's a right. We're not going to come up with a definition for it,
Okay.
but this is a selfish dad
Yeah.
conversation.
Yes. No, go ahead.
How do you help people think about modesty in our culture? Because the cultural narrative
Mm-hmm.
trends toward objectification
Mm-hmm.
and it's just it goes away from, hey, how do I take and steward what God has given me and the
Mm-hmm.
beauty of my body?
Mm-hmm.
And it very quickly can become wrapped up in that more objectifying, seeing me as an it, not a thou.
Mm-hmm.
And I think modesty trends towards that thou-ness that says,
Mm-hmm.
hey, beauty is alluring and beauty is beauty. How do you think about modesty? What is your thought on that from a Christian perspective in the industry as you see where the world is kind of pulling and
Mm-hmm.
pushing?
Well, I am very big on less is more, and and fit and fit, and usually fit is I feel whether it's a garment that is, I don't know, several $100s or a garment that's $50, really the fit of the garment matters so much. And generally, I mean, fashion is an expression, right? And so we're wearing these garments and we don't want to take away from what the purpose was of wearing this garment, right? Of
Mm,
wearing it well. And that's what I try to um, express to clients is that really when we're wearing garments, it's almost sometimes like we said, it's a balance. Sometimes the garment wears the individual,
mm.
sometimes the individual is taking away from the garment,
Sure,
right?
sure.
So it's finding that balance of, again, elegantly putting a wardrobe together that flatters but also honors,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's so good.
Yeah.
I'm thinking about all these different scriptures,
Yeah.
like don't let your beauty be defined by outward things, and but there's an inner quality. And I think
Right.
again that goes to, okay, go back to the beginning. I'm fearfully and wonderfully made,
Right.
and I'm in relationship with the artist who made me, the God who
Mm-hmm.
made me.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's a relational and a stewardship and a
Mm-hmm.
neighbor. All of that is in play. And
Mm-hmm.
that's why I love that you're willing to have this conversation
Yeah.
because it's complex. I think
Mm-hmm.
that's why
Yes.
sometimes we just get caught in
It
the
is.
rapids of cultural
Right.
movement and go, I don't know what I'm supposed to do, but I'll do it.
Right.
Or I'll undo everything and not participate. I think the more beautiful vision is to say, no, who has God made you to be? And
Mm-hmm.
God exists and
Right.
you exist and you
Right.
have a body
Right.
and beauty is a part of glorifying God. So let's think well about it. And
Mm-hmm.
again, that has to include God and it has to include my neighbor.
Right.
And to stay away from vanity where there's this over preoccupation of self. So this is important. We could probably have this conversation for days and days and days. I know a lot of people are curious about it when we think about music and visual art and poetry.
Right.
There's the question of like, does fashion count? So
Yes.
yeah, yes, it does.
It does.
Yeah. I appreciate you taking the time. For the person who right now is ashamed of themselves and they say, I'm listening to this conversation and that's all well and good for you, but you don't know my story. And it's hard for me to even face the day. And I will tell you, moving to Tampa is a different thing. The pressure towards body image and the comparison thing and things like that, they're more intense here, certainly, than they were in rural Oregon. So that's different maybe in different places, but I think it comes home to all of us because of social media. So regardless of where you live, you pick up a phone, you turn on a screen, and there's an immediate confrontation of comparison. So for that person who says like, I'm ashamed of who God made me to be, and I actually hate God and I hate my body because I'm trapped in this. How do you come alongside somebody who's feeling that much pain?
That's hard.
Yeah.
That's really hard. I really tried to have the conversation of one, listening to their feelings, but also really trying to show them the positive, because I no matter their story, there is good in it. There is something positive with their body, and I will find it.
Yeah.
and that will be the focus.
Yeah.
And we just start there. I mean, it takes, little baby steps, but whether it's, the color of their hair, the color of their eyes, great shoulders, nice legs, something that will, help. We start there to help and try to kind of peel back those layers and those stories they've been telling themselves. Yeah. Because there's something out there for everyone to make them feel good about themselves.
Yeah. What a tough world that's why I think I love scripture so much. And we go, well, whose voice are you listening to?
Right. I think that's
like,
most important.
What is my starting point? Where do I find my dignity, my identity, my worth? And that's why I love so much that the God of the Bible doesn't ignore the body. The body's central to it, and beauty is. And so we can have these tough conversations and look for answers and find some truth that is there. And that truth is, you are fearfully and wonderfully made. Like, full stop. God did not make a mistake. You are not an accident.
Absolutely.
You're not a disaster. And I get it that I've felt very ashamed of certain parts of my story. I know that people feel that. And we all feel it at greater and lesser degrees of intensity at some times. But there is a truth outside of that feeling that says, no, I know you feel that, and I'm not taking away from it, but you are fearfully and wonderfully made. That's the starting point. Now, there may be some ways that you have suffered or are suffering, and we can come alongside that and meet you there and not diminish that, but come and lift your arms up and say, I get it. I know your pain. I feel that. And God's given you a gift.
Yes.
The life you have. And we can start from there in those little small steps. Right. I love that.
Yeah. Reminding them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we need it. I think that's hard to, I think that friend Ryan O'Neill has a song, Sleeping at Last, that says, like, it's amazing just that you exist. Like, it's this beautiful song. And you take that and you take, like, I think it was Christina Aguilera, You Are Beautiful in Every Single Way, right? Like, I won't sing it.
Yeah.
And you take that to Psalm 139 and say, no, there is a God who made you. You're fearfully and wonderfully made. And you can grow in a deeper understanding and appreciation that beauty is objective. And so we can think well about it. And not everything is beautiful. And as a parent, we say that, right?
And like, as a wardrobe stylist,
yes, go back
not
upstairs.
Everything is beautiful.
That is not beautiful. That is not God honoring.
Yeah.
So for the person who goes, okay, great, again, this is a wonderful conversation, great resource. What's next?
Hmm.
If somebody can't call you, and I'll talk about how they reach out to you in a second, but how do you help people who are curious about, so, hey, I want to think well about this? Obviously, we have scripture, we have nature. What's the next place that you could point somebody who wants to think well about fashion and not be just driven by companies saying, buy this, wear this, think about this? Is there a
Hmm.
resource that helps people think well about fashion?
A resource in.
Even just a site, a link, a book that you can point people to say, hey, these people are guiding people. Maybe it's your
Mhm.
own website,
Yeah, reach out. I
Instagram.
will
Yeah.
have a conversation with you if you
Yeah.
reach out to me on Instagram. But yeah, I think I can't think of any off the top of my head right now. But I think there is there there is a, like you said, there is a lot of comparison. There is a lot out there, and I think really just first looking inward and praying about it and talking to God and really thinking about what they need, um, and not looking on the outside.
Sure.
Um, I can't think of a resource right
Yeah.
now, but yeah.
It's great. It's so fun. I love to ask that question because there's a
Mhm.
book for everything. I'm sure there's a
Uh,
great book out there. I haven't read it yet, but I think that there's also an opportunity. And I think that's why I
Yeah,
love what you're doing
right.
from a Christian perspective
Hmm.
in a space that is driven a lot by people who are trying to sell us something and
Yes.
trying to medicate a pain
Hmm.
point by saying, if you just buy this, wear this, then you'll get their approval, plays to that vanity. That's kind
Hmm.
of what we're swimming in.
Right.
And so you can be a voice and a resource. And so maybe you write that book and we'll
Yeah.
publish it. But
Maybe.
we're fresh off that game. Hey, how can people connect with you? Like, what's if somebody said, hey, this was really inspiring and Zach got in the way, I have a question. How do they reach out directly to you?
You can reach out directly to me on my Instagram, Madison Third Styling. That's probably one of the quickest ways. I will,
Perfect.
will respond to all messages. Also, email me at Erica at MadisonThirdStyling.com.
I love it.
Yeah.
Hey, I hope you'll take Erica up on that. I know that it's tough sometimes because we feel like that's an imposition. But what I heard from you today is that 5 or 6 year old you was this is who God made you to be
Hmm.
and he's matured and developed your faith in a way that has grown and enlarged your compassion for people,
Hmm.
and that you're in this space because you understand what it is to be a human in 2024 who's trying to navigate that really complex space and to do it beautifully and well. So I'm grateful that you have followed his calling. And I want to invite all of you to just consider like asking a question. One of my favorite things about this platform is just highlighting and putting these lives in beauty that give us a glimpse of the life and beauty of the gospel
Hmm.
and saying, hey, it's out there and you're not alone. So you've given us a tremendous gift, and I hope people take you up on the invitation. So, Erica, thank you so much. And we'll be cheering on your company and
Thank
your
you.
work and just who you are in the world. Thank you.
Thank you, Zach. Thank you so much.